you're doing a home addition, you don't have to do a HERS rating. You have a choice of what to do. You can either use the HERS index rating, and you, in theory, would have the choice of doing the HERS rating on just the addition, say if this was an addition, or for the whole house. And you have to reach the same ratings. In most cases, it would be hard to do this on just the extra room, because you have to, the HERS index is really set up to do a whole house evaluation, including the heating system, the water heater, and unless you're going to put a new heating system in this, it would be hard to get a good HERS rating if you're keeping your old heating system in the house. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, you basically have to fudge it in order to get it to just model that one piece.
Yeah, and if you've got an old heating system, you're not going to get a good rating anyway, right? So unless you're really doing, so you could do a rating on the whole house. It's probably going to be hard to meet the stretch code unless you're at least replacing the heating system. And even there, if you do a blower door test on the whole house and you haven't done anything to air seal the whole house, you're going to get a lousy blower door score. So we don't think that most people are going to go with a HERS index when you do an addition to just adding one room or a piece of the house. But you can also do a prescriptive path, which means that you only have to do a few things slightly differently from what the base code would require anyway. And those things are Energy Star windows, which the base code does not still require. You're required to have decent double pane windows, but they don't have to be Energy Star. Slightly less duct leakage if you're putting in new ducts, so 4 CFM per minute instead of 8 CFM. No difference from the insulation and envelope requirements, but you do have to follow the thermal bypass checklist, which you're going to explain in more detail. He's going to tell you exactly how to do this. And this basically means that you do a good job on the air seal. That you don't just do it, but you do it right. All right? So there's not a lot of differences if you're doing an addition from what the base code would require anyway. Now, for renovations, first, a lot of renovations, you won't necessarily have to do anything. And if you're only sort of doing a partial renovation, you're only required to meet the standards for the specific thing that you're doing. So if you were just putting in new windows, all right, you have to put in Energy Star windows. But if you're not doing the windows, you don't have to do anything to them. If you're taking out the walls and putting in new walls, then you have to fill the cavity with insulation and you have to do air seal. If you're not touching the walls, you don't have to do that. All right? So you don't necessarily have to follow this whole thing. It's just a piece of things that you're doing. If you're doing a gut rehab, like this picture shows, and changing everything, then you still have two choices. You can do the HERS rating, or you can do a prescriptive path. We recognize that for old houses, even for a gut rehab, it's pretty hard to make them function to the level of a new house. It's hard to get the air sealing right. You're not going to be able to put in as much insulation as you could into a new house. So the HERS rating scores are laxer on this. If it's less than 2,000 square feet, you only need an 85 rating. If it's bigger, you need an 80, which, as you can see, is really about the same as what you have to get for the base code on a new house. All right? Or you can do the prescriptive path, which is more or less the same thing that you have to do for an addition. You have to do Energy Star windows, and you have to do the good quality insulation and air sealing. And those are really the only changes. So it's fairly limited what we're requiring on renovations. We'd like to be able to require, if you were doing a heating system, that you put in a high efficiency heating system. Right now, the federal government won't let us do that. They preempt authority over efficiency standards for that equipment. We actually have an application pending before the Federal Department of Energy to get an exemption from that rule and let us mandate higher efficiency systems, because we think it's insane to only put in an 80% efficiency heating system in this climate, which is all the feds require, which is probably fine for Virginia, but doesn't make a lot of sense in Massachusetts. So if we get that exemption, then we will be requiring 90% efficiency systems, which, just curious, from builders in this room, what are you putting in now, if any of you do that?
Yeah, high efficiency, condensing furnaces, so 95 or 98% efficient.
Okay, anybody else? What do you install now?
Wall on boilers.
Nobody else?
I think you can buy an 80% boiler,
Well, you can nationally. I don't think they sell them very much in Mass because it's stupid to do it. But you could probably buy high 80s, right?
Yeah, you could definitely get 85, 88.
Yeah.
I've seen those being installed.
Right.
Well, the gas company gives you $1,000 back, but pays the difference, so.
That's right. The gas company will pay the difference between an 85 or an 80 and a 92 or a 94. You get 400 or 500 or 1,000, depending on what you put in. So it doesn't make a lot of sense to do it anyway. Even with these incentives, you might as well put in the right thing now. All right, this is an example. Probably not a typical Salem picture, but it's an example of one way of doing a single-family home and getting the HERS score that you're required to get. This is not the way that you have to do it, because what you're required to do is get the HERS score in the software, which you can achieve by a variety of different methods, right? You're not limited to one specific set of things. So this is just one example, and you can work with your HERS rater to figure out the most cost-effective or most sensible way in your situation. So in this example, ceiling insulation R38 grade 1. So this is no more ceiling insulation or attic insulation than you're required by the basic. But what it is assuming is you put it in there. Grade 1 means you put it in well, versus grade 2 where you don't put it in so well, and it's grade 3, which is even worse. So you get points in the HERS rating for the difference in how you install it. Now, I'm not a HERS rater. Can you give a sense by any chance? Do you have a sense from the software of how much difference it makes between grades of insulation?
It makes a huge difference. Actually, it makes a big, big difference. I couldn't put a number on it, but I've seen it, degrade it, to 5, even 10 points based on that grade.
Okay.
Like a grade 3.
Right, all right, so we're talking about 5 to 10 points could be a third or a half of what you need to get just by the quality of the insulation you put in. And Chris is going to tell you more about that.
Would you not pass code though, if you didn't put it in correctly? I'm a code official, just so you know. If you don't put it in right, it's not gonna pass inspection. And then, so if you've got how are you gonna get grade 2 if it's in wrong, it's coming out?
Well,
There's a difference in installing it wrong and installing it correctly, if that makes any sense. You'll see when my slides come up, I'll show some examples of what, in most people's cases, would be installed correctly. But I'll show the energy that's being lost through these things. So I'll show that next slide.
okay. Put in a 94% heating system, which, as we just said, is no big deal to do these days. Water heating, 62% is just more or less standard. There's not a lot of choice in water heaters. Reduce the duct leakage by sealing it well, just a slight improvement in the duct leakage. And a somewhat of an improvement in the air leakage by also sealing the house well, which again is something that the HERS rater is going to check. So instead of the lower door test showing 7 air changes per hour, it would show 5, right? On a typical old house, it would be higher than this. I know on my house, even after I had done some work on it, I live in a 2-family, we had something like 10.5 air changes per hour, right? But we think that a typically not very well done house might be 7. 80% fluorescent lighting, and then because you're doing a little better on the air leakage, in order to ensure that you've got enough fresh air coming in, you put in a minimal cost exhaust-only ventilation system, which generally means a bathroom fan with a timer. So by one set of calculations, you do this set of things, and this will get you to a HERS rating of 7. Right? On a house, this is on a house of about 2,700 square feet. We have specific modeling done for this. You could do it other ways. If you put more insulation in the walls or in the attic, that's going to get you extra credit, but we haven't assumed any of that. You could do other special things. If you wanted to put on some solar panels on the roof, that would get you extra credit, but we certainly don't assume that. Any questions about it?